Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Artsy Autism Mom Chronicles of Black History Month Spotlight. Today we are spotlighting James Baldwin. But before we get into James Baldwin's story, here is the intro and I will be back with you right after that. James Arthur Baldwin was an American writer and civil rights activist. He garnered acclaim for his work across several forms, including essays, novels, plays, and poems. Baldwin was born James Arthur Jones to Emma Burdish Jones on August 2nd, 1924, at Harlem Hospital in New York City. Baldwin was born out of wedlock. Jones never revealed to Baldwin who his biological father was. Some rumors stated that James's biological father suffered from drug addiction or that he died, but that in any case, Jones undertook to care for her son as a single mother. A native of Deal Island, Maryland, where she was born in 1903, Emma Jones is one of the many who fled racial segregation in the South during the Great Migration. She arrived in Harlem at age 19. In 1927, Jones married David Baldwin, a laborer and Baptist preacher. David was born in Bunkie, Louisiana, and preached in New Orleans, but left the South for Harlem in 1919. How David and Emma met is uncertain, but in James Baldwin's semi-autobiographical Go Tell It on the Mountain, the characters based on the two are introduced by the man's sister, who is a friend of the woman. Emma Baldwin would bear 8 children with her husband. James, who took his stepfather's last name, rarely wrote or spoke of his mother. When he did, he made clear that he admired and loved her, often through references to her loving smile. Baldwin moved several times in his early life, but always to different addresses in Harlem. Harlem was still a mixed-race area of the city in the incipient days of the Great Migration. Tenements and penury featured equality throughout the urban landscape. David Baldwin was many years Emma's senior. He may have been born before emancipation in 1893. Although James did not know exactly how old his stepfather was. James referred to his stepfather simply as his father throughout his life, but David and James shared an extremely difficult relationship, nearly rising to physical fights on several occasions. They fought because James read books, because he liked movies, because he had white friends. all of which David Baldwin thought threatened James' salvation. Baldwin's biographer wrote, David Baldwin also hated white people, and his devotion to God was mixed with the hope that God would take revenge on them for him. During the 1920s and 1930s, David worked as a soft drinks bottling factory, though he was eventually laid off from this job. And as his anger entered his sermons, he became less in demand as a preacher. David Baldwin sometimes took out his anger on his family, and the children became fearful of him. Tension to some degree balanced by the love lavished on them by their mother. David Baldwin grew paranoid near the end of his life. He was committed to a mental asylum in 1943 and died of tuberculosis on June 29th of that year, the same day Emma gave birth to their last child. James Baldwin, at his mom's urging, had visits with his dying stepfather the day before and came to something of a posthumous reconciliation with him in his essay, Notes of a Native Son, in which he wrote, in his outrageous, demanding, and protective way, he loved his children who were black like him and menaced like him. David Baldwin's funeral was held on James' 19th birthday around the same time that the Harlem riots broke out. As the oldest child, James worked part-time from an early age to help support his family. He was molded not only by the difficult relationships in his own household, but by the results of poverty and discrimination he saw all around him. As he grew up, friends he sat next to in church would turn away to drugs, crime, or sex work. In what he found not only a commentary of his own life, but on the black experience in America, Baldwin once wrote, I never had a childhood. I did not have any human identity. I was born dead. Baldwin wrote comparatively little about events at school. At 5 years old, Baldwin began school at Public School 24 on 128th Street in Harlem. The principal of the school was Gertrude E. Ayers, the first black principal in the city, who recognized Baldwin's precocity and encouraged him in his research and writing pursuits, as did some of his teachers who recognized he had a brilliant mind. Ayers stated that James Baldwin got his writing talent from his mother, whose notes to school were greatly admired by the teachers, and that her son also learned to write like an angel, albeit an avenging one. By the 5th grade, not yet a teenager, Baldwin had read some of Fyodor Dostoevsky's works, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, beginning a lifelong interest in Dickens' work. Baldwin wrote a song that earned New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia's praise in a letter that LaGuardia sent to Baldwin. Baldwin also won a prize for a short story that was published in a church newspaper. Baldwin's teachers recommended that he go to a public library on 135th Street in Harlem, a place that would become a sanctuary for Baldwin and where he would make a deathbed request for his papers and effects to be deposited. It was at PS 24 that Baldwin met Aurelia Bill Miller, a young white school teacher from the Midwest, whom Baldwin named as partially the reason that he never really managed to hate white people. Among other outings, Miller took Baldwin to see an all-black rendition of Orson Welles' take on Macbeth in Lafayette Theater, from which flowed a lifelong desire to succeed as a playwright. David was reluctant to let his stepson go to the theater. He saw stage work as sinful and was suspicious of Miller, but his wife insisted, reminding him of the importance of Baldwin's education. Miller later directed the first play that Baldwin ever wrote. After PS 24, Baldwin entered Harlem's Frederick Douglass Junior High School. At Douglass Junior High, Baldwin met two important influences. The first was Herman W. Bill Porter, a black Harvard graduate. Porter was the faculty advisor for the school's newspaper, the Douglass Pilot, where Baldwin would later be the editor. Porter took Baldwin to the library on 42nd Street to research a piece that would turn into Baldwin's first published essay titled Harlem, Then and Now, which appeared in the autumn of 1937 issue of Douglass Pilot. The second of these influences from his time at Douglass was the renowned poet of the Harlem Renaissance, Count T. Cullen. Cullen taught French and was a literary advisor in the English department. Baldwin later remarked that he adored Cullen's poetry and said he found the spark of his dream to live in France in Cullen's early impressions on him. Baldwin graduated from Frederick Douglass Junior High in 1938. In 1938, Baldwin applied to and was accepted at DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, a predominantly white and Jewish school. Matriculating there that fall, at DeWitt Clinton, Baldwin worked on the school's magazine, The Magpie, with Richard Avedon, who went on to become a noted photographer, and Emile Capuya and Sol Steen, who would become renowned publishers. Baldwin did interviews and editing at the magazine and published a number of poems and other writings. Baldwin finished at DeWitt Clinton in 1941. His yearbook listed his ambition as novelist playwright. Baldwin's motto in his yearbook was, "Fame is the spur," and ouch. During his high school years, uncomfortable with the fact that unlike many of his peers he was attracted to men rather than women, Baldwin sought refuge in religion. He first joined the now demolished Mount Calvary of the Pentecostal Faith Church on Lenox Avenue in 1937, but followed the preacher there, Bishop Rose Artemis Horn, who was affectionately called Mother Horn, when she left to preach at Fireside Pentecostal Assembly. At age 14, Brother Baldwin, as Baldwin was called, first took to Fireside's altar. It was at Fireside Pentecostal, during his most extemporaneous sermon, that Baldwin learned that he had authority as a speaker and could do things with a crowd. Baldwin delivered his final sermon at Fireside Pentecostal in 1941. Baldwin left school in 1941 to earn money to help support his family. He secured a job helping to build a United States Army depot in New Jersey. In the middle of 1942, Emile Capuya helped Baldwin get a job laying tracks for the military in Belmead, New Jersey. The two lived in Rocky Hill and commuted to Belmead. In Belmead, Baldwin came to know the face of a prejudice that deeply frustrated and angered him, and that he named the partial cause of his later immigration out of America. Baldwin's fellow white workmen, who mostly came from the South, derided him on what they called his uppity ways and his lack of respect. Baldwin's smart, ironic wit particularly upset the white Southerners he met in Belmead. During these years, Baldwin was torn between his desire to write and his need to provide for his family. He took a succession of menial jobs and feared becoming like his stepfather, who had been unable to provide for his family. Fired from the track-laying job, he returned to Harlem in June of 1943 to live with his family after taking a meatpacking job. Baldwin would lose the meatpacking job, too, after falling asleep at the plant. He became listless and unstable, drifting from this odd job to that. Baldwin drank heavily and endured the first of his nervous breakdowns. Delusioned by American prejudice against Black people, as well as wanting to see himself and his writing outside of an African American context, Baldwin left the United States at the age of 24 to settle in Paris. Baldwin wanted to be read as merely a Negro, not merely a Negro writer. He also hoped to come to terms with his sexual ambivalence and escape the hopelessness that many young African American men like himself succumb to in New York. Baldwin's fiction posed fundamental personal questions and dilemmas amid complex social and psychological pressures. His protagonists are often, but not exclusively, African American and gay and bisexual men, frequently featured predominantly in his literature. His reputation has endured since his death, and his work has been adapted for the screen to great acclaim. James Baldwin died on December 1st, 1987. I hope that this reflection and spotlight on his life has been interesting and helpful to you guys. I'll leave additional information in the description of this video. If you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to it now. Also, follow me on all my other social media. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and I have another page called The Purple Deeper Den where I do spoken word. I'll see you in the next